Captain Jake Morrison stood at the command center of the UES Liberty, watching a large screen that showed Earth in the distance. The blue planet looked peaceful from here, but Jake knew better. Every ship leaving Earth carried thousands of people who would never see their home again. The Galactic Council had promised them safe passage to new worlds in exchange for Earth's location and mineral rights. Jake turned to his second officer, Lisa Grant, who was checking the evacuation reports. Her face looked worried as she read the numbers on her screen. 3 million people had already left Earth on the first wave of ships. The Council had given humanity 6 months to evacuate completely before they would take control of the planet. The deal seemed fair at first. Humanity would get new worlds to live on, while the Council would use Earth as a strategic base for their expansion into this part of the galaxy. The 3 main species of the Council all had different needs. The crystal beings called Vorthans needed the rare metals in Earth's core. The bug-like Zephyrians wanted the organic compounds in the oceans. The water creatures known as Nexari needed Earth's position to control the shipping lanes between star systems. Jake had been suspicious from the beginning, but Admiral Helen Burke had convinced him that humanity had no choice. Earth was running out of resources, and the population was growing too fast. The Council offered them a dozen empty worlds that could support human life. It seemed like the perfect solution to humanity's problems. Lisa looked up from her screen with a strange expression. She had been monitoring Council communications as part of her duties, but something in the alien messages had caught her attention. The translation programs were having trouble with some of the technical terms, but the basic meaning was clear enough. She walked over to Jake and spoke quietly so the other crew members could not hear. The Council ships that were supposed to be escorting the human evacuation fleets had changed course 3 hours ago. Instead of heading toward the colony worlds, they were moving to intercept the human ships in deep space, where no one would see what happened. Jake felt his blood go cold as he realized what Lisa was telling him. The Council was not planning to relocate humanity. They were planning to eliminate them completely. The evacuation was really a trap to get all the humans away from Earth, where they could be destroyed without witnesses. He ordered Lisa to verify the information while he sent an encrypted message to Admiral Burke on the command ship Horizon. The reply came back within minutes and confirmed their worst fears. Council forces were surrounding all the human evacuation fleets. The aliens had never intended to honor their agreement. The first attack came 20 minutes later. Jake watched on the main screen as Vorthan energy weapons tore through the hull of a human transport ship. The vessel had been carrying 15,000 civilians, including women and children. It broke apart in seconds, and there were no survivors. More attacks followed across the fleet. The Council ships moved with perfect coordination as they hunted down every human vessel they could find. The transport ships had no weapons and could not fight back. The few military escorts were outnumbered 10-1 and destroyed quickly. Jake realized that the Liberty was probably doomed along with the rest of the fleet, but he was not going to give up without a fight. He ordered his crew to prepare for battle, even though they only had light weapons designed for fighting pirates rather than warships. At least they would die fighting instead of running. But then something unexpected happened. A message came through on the emergency channel from Admiral Burke. She was not on the command ship Horizon, as everyone had believed. She was actually on a hidden research station called Genesis that had been built in secret over the past 5 years. The message explained that Burke and other human leaders had suspected the Council's true intentions for months. They had been intercepting alien communications and had discovered evidence of the planned betrayal. The evacuation had been real, but it was not the complete picture. Hidden across the galaxy were dozens of human settlements that the Council knew nothing about. Deep space mining operations, research stations built inside asteroids, exploration ships that had been sent to map distant star systems. Nearly 50 million humans were scattered across hundreds of locations throughout known space. The Council had been watching Earth and the major colony worlds, but they had no idea how far humanity had actually spread. The aliens thought they were destroying the entire human race, but they were really only hitting the most visible targets. Burke's message continued with new orders for all surviving human forces. They were to go dark immediately and avoid all contact with Council ships. Supply caches had been hidden throughout the galaxy, containing weapons, food, and equipment. The humans would scatter and survive until they could regroup for a counterattack. Jake felt a mixture of relief and anger as he processed this information. Relief that humanity would survive the Council's betrayal, but anger that so many innocent people had to die to maintain the deception. The civilians on the transport ships had not known they were being used as bait to make the Council believe their genocide was complete. Lisa worked frantically at her station to download Burke's data files before the Council ships could jam there. Communications. The files contained locations of supply caches, safe routes through space, and most importantly, a complete analysis of Council military technology that human scientists had been studying in secret. The Liberty managed to escape the battle by hiding in the shadow of a destroyed transport ship. Jake waited until the Council forces moved on before powering up his engines and heading for the nearest supply cache. His crew was silent as they watched the debris field that had once been their people. Over the following days, reports came in from across the galaxy. The Council's attack had been swift and brutal. Earth itself had been cracked open like an egg to get at the metals in the core. The major human colonies had been sterilized from orbit. Billions were dead, but millions had survived in hidden locations. Jake realized that the Council had made a terrible mistake. They had tried to eliminate humanity quickly and cleanly, but instead they had created something much more dangerous. Scattered human survivors with nothing left to lose and access to advanced alien technology they had been studying in secret. The Council thought they had solved their human problem. Instead, they had turned peaceful explorers into desperate fighters who now knew exactly how ruthless their enemies could be. The aliens had taught humanity that mercy was weakness, and that survival required any sacrifice. As the Liberty reached its first supply cache, Jake received Admiral Burke's final message of the day. 3 simple words that would guide humanity's actions for years to come. Remember what they did. Survive by any means necessary. Return when you are strong enough for revenge. 6 months had passed since Earth died, and the galaxy had begun to notice something strange. Council supply convoys traveling through the Outer Rim systems were disappearing without any trace or warning. Ships that should have arrived at their destinations simply vanished as if they had never existed at all. Captain Roy Chun sat in the command chair of his ship, the Iron Wolf, watching a Vorthan supply vessel approach their ambush position. His crew of 43 survivors had spent the last 4 months turning their old mining ship into something the Council would learn to fear. They had painted over the bright orange hull with dark gray that made them almost invisible. Against the black of space. Roy had been a simple asteroid miner before the betrayal, but war had taught him skills he never thought he would need. His ship carried mining explosives that had been converted into weapons and cutting tools that could slice through alien hull plating like paper. Most importantly, they had captured Council communication equipment that let them listen to enemy transmissions. Vorthan's supply ship was carrying food and medical supplies to a Council outpost 3 systems away. Roy knew this because his communications officer had been intercepting their messages for weeks. The aliens were so confident in their victory over humanity that they barely bothered to encrypt their transmissions anymore. Roy gave the signal, and his crew activated their plan. The Iron Wolf had been disguised to look like a damaged freighter drifting in space. When the council ship moved close to investigate, Roy's people used magnetic clamps to attach their vessel to the alien hull. Within minutes, they had cut through the outer plating and were inside. The Vorthan crew never knew what hit them. Humans moved through their ship like shadows, using the advantage of surprise and their knowledge of the alien ship layout. Roy had studied captured council technical manuals until he knew their vessels better than their own crews did. The attack was over in less than 10 minutes. Roy's team took everything useful from the supply ship, including food, weapons, and most importantly, the navigation computer that contained locations of other council facilities. They left no survivors because Admiral Burke's orders had been very clear about that. The council had shown no mercy to human civilians, so humans would show no mercy to them. Meanwhile, on the hidden research station Genesis, Dr. Amy Torres was making discoveries that would change the war completely. She had been studying captured council biotechnology for months and had found something the aliens probably wished they had kept secret. All 3 council species used the same basic quantum communication system to coordinate their activities across the galaxy. Amy had been a communications engineer before the war, but now she was becoming something much more dangerous. She was learning how the council's technology worked, and more importantly, how it could be broken. The quantum network that connected every council ship and outpost had a weakness that human scientists were only beginning to understand. The alien communication system used quantum entangled particles to send messages instantly across any distance. This made their coordination almost perfect, but it also meant that disrupting the network in one place could cause problems everywhere else. Amy was working on a way to turn the council's greatest strength into their biggest vulnerability. Her research team had captured several council officers during Roy's raids and were using them to test their theories. The aliens were not willing subjects, but they provided valuable information about how their technology actually worked. Amy felt guilty about the harsh methods they were using, but she remembered the burning remains of Earth, and her conscience became quiet. Other human groups were causing problems for the council in different ways. Captain Ben Parker had managed to capture an entire Vorthan cruiser by pretending to be a council patrol ship. His crew now used the alien vessel to move freely through council space, attacking targets and disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. Commander Rita Davis was leading raids against Zephyrian breeding colonies where the insect aliens raised their young. Her attacks were specifically designed to disrupt their reproduction cycle and prevent new generations of council soldiers from being born. Rita had lost her own children when Earth was destroyed, and she was making sure the aliens understood how that felt. Lieutenant Sam Foster had found a different way to hurt the council by turning asteroid mining equipment into weapons of mass destruction. His team would plant mining charges on asteroids and then push them toward council cities. On water worlds, the Nexari had thought their underwater cities were safe, but they learned that humans could find ways to hurt anyone anywhere. The council was beginning to realize that their quick victory over humanity had not been as complete as they thought. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy about ghost ships that appeared from nowhere to attack supply convoys and disappear again. Council commanders were having trouble understanding how humans who should have been dead were striking at targets hundreds of light years apart. What the council did not know was that Admiral Burke was coordinating all these attacks from her hidden command center. Every raid was planned to cause maximum damage while gathering intelligence about council weaknesses. The scattered human survivors were not acting randomly, but following a careful strategy designed to cripple the alien. Alliance. Burke had realized that the council's greatest strength was their unity between 3 very different species. The crystal Vorthans provided technology, the insect Zephyrians supplied soldiers, and the aquatic Nexari controlled the shipping routes. If humanity could disrupt the cooperation between these groups, the entire council structure might collapse. First signs of success came when intercepted Council communications began showing increased tensions between the three species. Vorthan commanders were complaining that Zephyrian forces were not responding quickly enough to human attacks. Nexari admirals were angry that their shipping routes were not being properly protected. The perfect cooperation that had made the Council so powerful was starting to crack. Roy Chun's Iron Wolf had become the most feared human ship in the outer systems. Council crews would sometimes surrender rather than fight when they recognized his vessel approaching. But Roy was not interested in prisoners unless they had useful information. His orders were to hurt the enemy as much as possible, and he was very good at following orders. As the attacks continued, the Council began to understand that they were facing something they had never encountered before. Humanity was not just fighting back, but learning and adapting with every battle. Each raid taught them more about Council technology and tactics, while the aliens learned nothing useful about their human enemies. The galaxy was changing, and the Council was beginning to fear the consequences of what they had done to Earth. 1 year after the Council destroyed Earth, the quantum communication network that connected their entire civilization began to fail in ways they could not understand. Messages that should have taken seconds to transmit were delayed for hours or lost completely. Orders from Central Command never reached distant outposts, and supply schedules became chaos. Commander Danny Walsh led his team of former Earth Marines through the corridors of the primary quantum relay station, hidden deep in the Kepler Nebula. His soldiers moved like ghosts through the crystalline passages that housed the most important communication hub in Council space. They had spent 6 months planning this mission, and now they were finally inside the heart of the enemy network. Danny's team called themselves the Void Reapers because they brought death to places where the Council thought they were safe. Each Marine carried weapons built from salvaged alien technology and human engineering that made them deadly in close combat. More importantly, they carried the technical knowledge that Dr. Amy Torres had developed during her months of studying Council systems. The relay station was a massive structure built by the Vorthans using their crystal-growing technology. Thousands of quantum processors worked together to handle communications for half the galaxy. The alien technicians who maintained the system had no idea that humans had been studying their work for almost a year and knew exactly how to break it. Danny found the central control room where 3 Vorthan engineers were monitoring the quantum network. The crystal beings turned to face the human intruders, but they were too slow to react. Within seconds, the aliens were dead, and Danny's team was connecting their equipment to the Council's most sensitive systems. But the humans were not just planning to destroy the relay station. Amy Torres had taught them something much more effective than simple sabotage. They were going to corrupt the entire network by introducing false information that would spread through every connected system like a virus. Danny's communications expert plugged a human-built device into the main quantum processor and began uploading carefully prepared data packets. To the Council systems, the information looked like normal network traffic, but it contained hidden programs that would cause failures throughout their communication grid. Every message sent through the network would carry the corruption further into Council space. The process took 20 minutes to complete, while Danny's team defended the control room against increasing alien security forces. Council soldiers poured into the station, but they were too late to stop the upload. By the time they reached the central chamber, the damage was already spreading through quantum space at faster than light speeds. On the hidden world of New Haven, Admiral Burke watched the results of Danny's mission through intercepted Council communications. The quantum network was collapsing exactly as Amy Torres had predicted it would. Systems that had worked perfectly for thousands of years were failing as human designed. Corruption spread through their data streams. Burke had been planning this moment since the day Earth died. Every human raid and every captured alien had been part of a larger strategy to understand and ultimately destroy the Council's ability to coordinate their forces. The quantum network was their nervous system, and now humans were cutting it apart piece by piece. Amy Torres was also on New Haven, working frantically to expand the network attack before the Council could figure out how to stop it. She had discovered that the three alien species used different encryption methods for their most sensitive communications, but all of them passed through the same quantum relay points. This meant that humans could impersonate any of the Council races by using the right communication protocols. Amy's team began sending false orders through the corrupted network, making each Council species believe that the others were planning to betray them. Vorthan commanders received messages claiming that Zephyrian forces were preparing to attack crystal mining worlds. Nexari admirals got reports that Vorthan ships were moving to blockade water planets. The insect Zephyrians learned that their allies were supposedly planning to destroy their breeding colonies. The false information was carefully designed to match existing tensions between the three species. Amy had studied months of intercepted communications and knew exactly what fears and suspicions already existed in the Council alliance. She was simply giving those doubts a voice and making them seem real. Captain Jake Morrison's ship, the Liberty, had become a mobile command center, coordinating human operations across 12 star systems. His crew had rescued thousands of human survivors and recruited alien mercenaries who had grown tired of Council oppression. The galaxy contained many species that the Council had conquered or intimidated, and some of them were willing to help humanity fight back. Jake had been contacted by representatives of the Klaxon Empire, the Rimward Collective, and dozens of smaller civilizations that wanted to see the Council weakened. These aliens provided intelligence about Council ship movements and safe harbors where human vessels could hide and resupply. In exchange, humans shared captured Council technology and tactical information. The most important allies were the free traders who operated throughout the galaxy, carrying cargo and information between different worlds. These independent merchants had always resented Council restrictions on their business and were happy to help humans move supplies and personnel without being detected. Many human survivors owed their lives to free trader captains who had rescued them from Council patrols. As the quantum network continued to fail the three Council species began to openly distrust each other for the first time in centuries. Vorthan crystal ships started avoiding systems controlled by their Zephyrian allies. Nexari water fleets changed their patrol routes to stay away from areas where the other species operated. The perfect unity that had made the Council so powerful was cracking under the pressure of human psychological warfare. The breakdown in communications meant that Council forces could not coordinate their responses to human attacks. Roy Chun's Iron Wolf and dozens of other human raiders struck at targets across the galaxy, while alien reinforcements sat in the wrong systems, waiting for orders that would never come. Each successful raid captured more equipment and freed more human prisoners who joined the growing resistance movement. Burke realized that the Council was beginning to understand what humanity had become. The scattered survivors were not just fighting for revenge anymore, but working toward a larger goal of reshaping the entire galaxy. The aliens had tried to eliminate humanity because they feared human unpredictability and aggression, but their actions had created exactly what they were trying to prevent. Humanity was no longer the peaceful species that had negotiated with the Council for mining rights and colony worlds. They had become something harder and more dangerous that understood how to use their enemies' strengths against them. The Council's greatest asset had become their greatest vulnerability, and now there was no way to put the quantum network back together again. 2 years after Earth became ash, the Galactic Council was fighting 3 separate wars instead of ruling a unified empire. The Vorthans had blockaded Zephyrian trade routes, claiming the insect aliens were stealing crystal technology. The Nexari had invaded 2 Vorthan mining worlds, saying they needed the rare metals for their underwater cities. The Zephyrians were attacking both species, while claiming they were defending themselves against unprovoked aggression. Admiral Helen Burke watched the chaos from her hidden command center on New Haven, knowing that every battle between Council forces was exactly what humanity needed. Her scattered fleets had grown from desperate survivors into a coordinated military force that numbered over 300 ships. Most importantly, they had learned to think like predators instead of prey. Burke called together her senior commanders for the most important briefing since Earth's destruction. A holographic display showed the current positions of all Council fleets, and the pattern was exactly what human strategists had been working toward for 2 years. The alien forces were spread thin across dozens of contested systems fighting each other, instead of hunting for human survivors. Captain Lisa Grant now commanded the captured Vorthan dreadnought Retribution, along with a crew of 500 humans, who had learned to operate alien technology better than its original builders. Her ship was the most powerful vessel in the human fleet, and had become a symbol of how far they had come since the dark days after the betrayal. Lisa reported that her intelligence teams had identified the perfect moment to reveal humanity's true strength. The Council species were so focused on fighting each other that they had forgotten about the human threat. Their leaders believed that the scattered raids and communication failures were just the death throes of a defeated enemy, rather than part of a careful plan. Commander Roy Chun's Ghost Fleet had expanded from a single converted mining ship into 20 vessels that struck fear into Council crews across the Outer Rim. His raiders had perfected the art of appearing from nowhere to destroy enemy ships and disappearing again before reinforcements could arrive. But Roy's most important contribution was the psychological warfare his attacks created. Every Council captain now worried that the next ship on their sensors might be a human raider in disguise. The aliens had started shooting at their own vessels, by mistake, because they could not tell friend from enemy anymore. Roy's people had captured so many Council ships that they could impersonate any of the 3 species perfectly. Dr. Amy Torres had made a discovery that changed everything about how humans understood their enemies. Deep in the captured Council databases, she found records of dozens of other civilizations that had been quietly eliminated over the past 10,000 years. Humanity was not the first species to be betrayed by the Council, but they were the first to survive and fight back. Effectively. The records showed that the Council had a standard method for dealing with species they considered dangerous. First, they would offer beneficial trade agreements and mutual defense treaties. Then they would gradually take control of the target civilization's economy and military. Finally, they would manufacture a crisis that justified complete elimination of the threat. Amy's research revealed that the Council had destroyed over 40 different species using variations of this same plan. They had perfected the art of genocide while maintaining their reputation as protectors of galactic peace. The evidence was overwhelming, and Amy knew it would be useful for turning other civilizations against the Council. Captain Jake Morrison had been working to build alliances with the many species that the Council had oppressed but not destroyed. His diplomatic missions had convinced representatives from over 60 different worlds to provide secret support for the human resistance. These aliens were not ready to fight the Council openly, but they were willing to share intelligence and provide safe harbors. Jake had learned that many civilizations throughout the galaxy lived in fear of suffering the same fate as humanity. The Council's perfect genocide had actually created the opposite effect from what they intended. Instead of deterring resistance, it had shown other species exactly what would happen to them if they ever became too successful or independent. Breakthrough came when Morrison made contact with the Altarian Republic, which controlled 30 star systems on the Galactic Rim. The Altarians had been fighting a cold war with the Council for centuries, and were eager to find allies who could help them resist alien expansion into their territory. They offered to provide military support if humans could prove they were capable of seriously damaging Council power. Burke realized that the moment had arrived to reveal the true scope of human survival and coordination. For 2 years, the scattered human forces had maintained the illusion that they were just desperate refugees striking back at their destroyers. Now it was time to show the galaxy that humanity had not just survived the Council's betrayal, but had used it to become something much more dangerous. The plan Burke revealed to her commanders was breathtaking in its scope and ambition. Human forces would simultaneously attack key targets throughout Council space while broadcasting the evidence of the aliens' historical crimes to every civilization in the galaxy. The goal was not just military victory, but complete destruction of the Council's political legitimacy. Roy Chun would lead coordinated strikes against Council supply bases in 12 systems, cutting off reinforcements to their frontline forces. Lisa Grant would take the Retribution and 6 other heavy ships to attack the Council's main military shipyard, where their most advanced vessels were built. Morrison would coordinate with alien allies to seize control of major communication networks and broadcast Amy's evidence across the galaxy. But the most important target was the Council's capital world of Vind, Nexus Prime, where the 3 species maintained their joint government. Burke herself would lead the main human fleet in a direct assault on the planet that had ordered Earth's destruction. The symbolic value of capturing or destroying the Council's seat of power would be worth more than a dozen military victories. As the final preparations began, Burke sent a message to every human survivor throughout the galaxy. After 2 years of hiding and raiding, it was time to come out of the shadows and show their enemies what humanity had become. The species that the Council had tried to eliminate was about to teach them the true meaning of regret. The hunters were about to become the hunted, and the galaxy would never be the same again. 3 years after the betrayal, the human fleet emerged from hyperspace above Nexus Prime, like a pack of wolves appearing at the edge of a flock of sheep. Admiral Burke stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching 200 ships take formation around the Council's capital world. Each vessel carried humans who had nothing left to lose and everything to prove to a galaxy that had watched their homeworld burn. The message Burke broadcast to Nexus Prime was simple and direct. The Council had wanted to eliminate humanity, so now they would face what their actions had created. Every ship in the human fleet had been captured from Council forces or built using stolen alien technology. The species the Council had tried to destroy had learned to use their enemies' own weapons against them. The battle for Nexus Prime began when Vorthan defense platforms opened fire on the approaching human ships. But the aliens quickly discovered that their enemies were no longer the peaceful explorers who had once begged for colony worlds and mining rights. These humans fought with the desperation of survivors and the skill of predators, who had spent 3 years learning how to kill. Captain Lisa Grant led the first wave of attackers in her captured dreadnought Retribution. Her ship had been built by Vorthan crystal technology, but now it served human purposes and carried weapons that the original designers never intended. Lisa's crew moved through the alien systems like they had been born to them, because 3 years of war had taught them to adapt or die. The Council's orbital defenses crumbled under the human assault faster than anyone had expected. Roy Chun's raiders struck the defense platforms from unexpected angles, while Jake Morrison's diplomatic contacts provided intelligence about weak points in the alien fortifications. Within 6 hours, the space around Nexus Prime belonged to humanity, but the real battle was just beginning as human forces prepared to land on the planet itself. Burke had studied the layout of the Council chambers for 2 years and knew exactly where to find the leaders who had ordered Earth's destruction. She would not be satisfied with military victory alone, because this war had always been about justice for the billions who had died. the assault shuttles descended through Nexus Prime's atmosphere, carrying Marines who had trained for this moment since the day they learned their homeworld was gone. These soldiers moved through the crystalline corridors of the Council complex, like death itself, hunting for the three beings who had signed humanity's execution order. Captain Morrison led the team that captured Prime Resonance Vextar of the Vorthans in his crystal palace beneath the planet's surface. The alien leader tried to surrender, but Morrison remembered the burning cities of Earth and showed the same mercy the Council had given to human children. Vextar died, knowing that his perfect plan had created the very enemy he had tried to prevent. Commander Roy Chun found Hive Queen Zexali of the Zephyrians in her breeding chamber, surrounded by thousands of insect eggs that would never hatch. Roy had lost his own family when Earth died, and he made sure the alien queen understood exactly how that felt before he ended her life. The Zephyrian military command collapsed when their queen's death pheromones spread through their forces. Deep Current Nalava of the Nexari tried to escape in an underwater shuttle, but human divers caught her before she could reach the ocean. The aquatic leader had expected to negotiate some kind of peace deal, but she discovered that humans were no longer interested in treaties with species that had proven they could not be trusted. As the Council leaders died their forces throughout, the galaxy began to surrender rather than continue fighting a war they could no longer win. The three species had depended on unified command for so long that they could not function independently. When their government collapsed, without central coordination, their fleets scattered like leaves in a hurricane. Dr. Amy Torres stood in the Council's central database chamber, uploading the evidence of their crimes to every communication network in the galaxy. The records she had discovered showed 40 civilizations that had been eliminated by the same methods used against humanity. Within hours, every species in known space learned the truth about their supposed protectors. The revelation changed everything about how the galaxy understood the Council and their role in galactic politics. Species that had lived in fear of human expansion now realized that humanity had been the victim rather than the aggressor. The Council's reputation as peacekeepers was destroyed forever by the evidence of their systematic genocide. Burke stood in the same chamber where the Council had voted to destroy Earth and felt a satisfaction that 3 years of war had not prepared her for. The beings who had murdered her world were dead, and their empire was crumbling under the weight of its own lies. But victory brought responsibility that she had not expected. Representatives from dozens of alien civilizations arrived at Nexus Prime within days of the Council's fall, asking what humanity planned to do with their newfound power. The galaxy needed leadership, and the species that had defeated the Council were the obvious choice to provide it. But Burke remembered how power had corrupted the Council and was determined not to repeat their mistakes. Instead of claiming control over the Council's territory, Burke announced the formation of a new kind of government based on equality rather than domination. The Galactic Confederation would include any species that wanted to join, regardless of their size or military strength. Decisions would be made by democratic vote rather than the commands of a ruling council. The response from across the galaxy was overwhelming, as hundreds of civilizations requested membership in the new confederation. Species that had been oppressed by the Council for centuries finally had hope for a better future. Even some Vorthans, Zephyrians, and Nexari, who had opposed their leaders' policies, asked to join the human-led alliance. Jake Morrison was elected as the first president of the Galactic Confederation, with representatives from 60 different species serving in the new government. The crystal chambers that had once housed the Council's tyranny now echoed with debates between equals working together to build something better than what had come before. As Burke prepared to leave Nexus Prime, she received a message that made her smile for the first time since Earth's destruction. The deep space colonies that had been evacuated before the betrayal were ready to come home. Hidden fleets carrying millions of human survivors were emerging from the void to reclaim their place in the galaxy. Was gone, but humanity had found something more valuable among the stars. They had discovered that their greatest strength was not their weapons or their technology, but their ability to inspire others to be better than they thought possible. A council had tried to eliminate humanity because they feared what humans might become, but their actions had created exactly what they were trying to prevent. The age of the council was over, and the age of the Confederation had begun with humanity, leading the way toward a future where genocide would never again be disguised as peacekeeping.